Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Guess the Prophet quiz. 40 questions. You have 7 seconds per question. Say your answers out loud. Ready? Bismillah. Which prophet was created from clay and taught all names? Adam alayhi al-salam. Which prophet called his people for 950 years and built the ark by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's command? Nuh alayhi al-salam. Which prophet was sent to the people of Ad? Hud alayhi al-salam. Which prophet was given the she-camel as a sign by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's command? Salih alayhi salam. Which prophet warned the people of Midian to use honest weights and measures? Shuaib alayhi al-salam. Which prophet was saved from the fire by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will? Ibrahim alayhi salam. Which prophet helped build the Kaaba with his father? Ismail alayhi salam. Which prophet showed great patience through severe trials? Ayyub alayhi salam. Which prophet interpreted dreams in Egypt? Yusuf alayhi salam. Which prophet is also called Israel? Yaqub alayhi salam. Which prophet was the son of Ibrahim alayhi salam and Sarah? Ishaq alayhi salam. Which prophet received the Torah and parted the sea by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's permission? Musa alayhi salam. Which prophet was sent with Musa alayhi salam to Pharaoh as a helper? Harun alayhi salam. Which prophet had iron softened for him by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's permission? Dawud alayhi salam. Which prophet understood an ant's speech by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's permission? Sulaiman alayhi salam. Which prophet was swallowed by a great fish and called upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in darkness? Yunus alayhi al-salam. Which prophet cared for Maryam alayha al-salam in the sanctuary? Zakaria alayhi al-salam. Which prophet was praised for purity and kindness to parents from a young age? Yahya alayhi salam. Which prophet was born without a father by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's command? Isa alayhi salam. Which prophet received the Quran as the final revelation? Muhammad alayhi salatu wal salam. Which prophet led all prophets in prayer during Al-Isra wal Miraj by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will? Muhammad alayhi salatu wal salam. Which prophet called his people away from worshipping Baal? Ilyas alayhi salam. Which prophet was given the miracle of reviving the dead by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's permission? Isa alayhi salam. Which prophet warned his people against indecency among the same gender? Lut alayhi salam. Which prophet was raised to a high position by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Idris alayhi salam. Who is mentioned in the Quran among the patient alongside Ismail alayhi salam and Idris alayhi salam? Dhul Kifl alayhi salam. Which prophet's people were destroyed with a violent wind by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's command? Hud alayhi salam. Which prophet struck the rock and 12 springs gushed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's permission? Musa alayhi salam. Which prophet migrated from Mecca to Medina with Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu? Muhammad alayhi salatu wal salam. Which prophet had a staff that turned into a snake by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's permission? Musa alayhi salam. Which prophet broke the idols of his people to show their powerlessness? Ibrahim alayhi salam. To which prophet did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala subject mountains and birds to glorify with him? Dawud alayhi salam. Which prophet was taught to say, "My Lord, increase me in knowledge"? Muhammad alayhi salatu wal salam. Which prophet is praised as true to his promise? Ismail alayhi salam. Which prophet had the wind subjected to him by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's permission? Sulaiman alayhi salam. Which prophet was able to speak clearly in the cradle? Isa alayhi salam. Which prophet worked as a carpenter? Zakaria alayhi salam. Which prophet shaped a bird from clay and it became alive by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's permission? Isa alayhi salam. Which prophet's hand became radiant white by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's permission? Musa alayhi salam. Which prophet delivered the final message to all people until the end of time? Muhammad alayhi salatu wal salam. Thanks for playing. Drop your score in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more quizzes. Assalamu alaikum.